Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am excited to kick off today's Friday forum on the topic of metrics and measurement. I am Matt Snodgrass, your moderator for today, and it's my pleasure to introduce our first presentation. Now, before we get started, just a few updates and housekeeping notes. If you experience any audio or visual problems, please try to just refresh the page. You can always log out and log back in. That'll take care of most of the situations that you run. Please try to just refresh the page. You can always log out and log back in. That'll take care of most of the situations that you run into. If your options open like I usually do, a million browser tabs, it could impact your viewing experience. So try to be hardwired and close down any extraneous apps you're running right now. To chat today with your peers or with the Marketing Prof staff, you can click the orange chat button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And don't forget the presentation slides are available for download anytime by clicking the download slides button located in the upper right of the screen. So lower right is chat, upper right are the slides. I want to say thank you to today's sponsor, Alight Analytics. Be sure to check out the Alight Analytics booth for educational resources and product information that they've got today. And finally, if you want to follow along today's conversation on Twitter, please use the hashtag MProfs. That is hashtag MPROFS if you want to follow the conversation on Twitter. Now, join me in welcoming Duarte Martins, who is presenting how to get full visibility into your content marketing performance. Duarte is the analytics lead at the award-winning B2B content marketing agency Velocity Partners. He has dedicated his career to the tech industry, and he's focused on helping content marketers demonstrate the impact of their work through data analysis. At the end of the presentation, we'll ask Duarte your questions, so please use the Chat Now button in the lower right to ask any that you have. And with that, I'm going to turn it over. Duarte, my friend, are you ready?
Ready to go.
All right, please take it away.
Sure. Let me just begin by sharing my screen. Here we are. Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to say that I'll be keeping my webcam off just to make sure that the quality of the presentation is up to par, up to standard. So with that in mind, let's kick things off. So I'm going to present to you today how to get full visibility into your content marketing performance. We're going to start off by looking over 2 goals that marketers always want to achieve, 3 challenges keeping marketers from achieving those goals, and then my suggestion to you today on how to overcome these challenges in the form of a content analytics framework. This framework is based on 4 different dimensions, which we'll cover. And then as a bonus, I've left some tips and tricks for you to check out at the end of this deck, which I won't cover now in the presentation, but as Matt kindly said, the deck will be available for you to download on the Marketing Profs website. So if you choose to implement this framework yourself, you have some tips and tricks to help you out there. So let's get straight to the goals. So as content marketers, we want to be able to provide prospects and customers with really great experiences that eventually leads to commercial activities. So we can separate that in 2 different ways here. So we want to, first of all, create a great content that adds value to our target audience, but we also want to be able to show that it works. And in this deck, you're going to learn the process that we use internally at Velocity to achieve this. Just keep in mind, it's based on 4 critical aspects here, and it's going to help you reduce the tools and technical complexity that you need. It's going to attribute the impact of your marketing more accurately, and it's going to allow you to bridge the gap that sometimes exists between analytics and creative teams. So let's go over these main challenges that marketers commonly face in keeping them from reaching these goals. So the first one is that while we have many tools at our disposal, they haven't necessarily been designed to provide content-focused KPIs and metrics right out of the box. I'm sure many of you in the audience will be familiar with some of these tools, email-focused, marketing automation, some web analytics, and a mixture of all these. But a lot of these tools, they're fit for these specific purposes, not necessarily to give you that information that you need for your content. So just to give you an example here, when we open up Google Analytics being one of the most famous and most well-known digital marketing tools out there, this is what you're faced with, assuming you've got it set up and it's up and running. So at the top here, you'll see the amount of users visiting your site over the past week. In blue, in this blue rectangle here, the active users on your site right now. Then at the bottom, you'll see, the different traffic channels where you're acquiring your users from, where your users are browsing from, and also the time of day that they prefer to browse to. So the immediate thing that becomes apparent is that this is a user-focused tool, at least on the face of it. If you want to get content marketing related KPIs, if you want to dig into how your content performs, you have to know what you're doing. You have to fully investigate that within the tool, go and search for the right metrics and know where they are. So at a first glance, at least, it's not a tool that's geared towards content marketing. It's much more focused towards users. And the other thing is that it's also a tool that's limited to your web properties. So should your content live outside your web properties, then it won't be able to reflect that. Another issue is just the sheer amount of tools that exist out there. I'm sure many of you have already seen this infographic. So Scott Brinker's MarTech landscape. Just to show you that, in the past 9 years or so, we've sort of 50x the amount of tools that exist out there when it comes to marketing technology. So, most of us wouldn't get through 150 tools in our lifetime, let alone 8,000. So, there's a lot to choose from. It's easy to get confused and not know what to choose, what the right tools are. So those are the two main problems around tools. First of all, that they're not necessarily geared towards content marketing, and second of all, that there are just so many out there that it's difficult to know what the right ones are. The second main challenge is that even if we did have that data, even if we were able to properly retrieve data from the right tools using the right data points, it's actually pretty difficult to establish how much marketing has contributed to revenue. A report here on the Marketing Profs website said that nearly 50% of content marketers say that they simply do not measure their content marketing ROI. So of these, nearly 40% said that they need an easier way to measure ROI, nearly 30% admitted to not knowing how to do so, and about 20% found the process too time-consuming. This is hardly surprising considering what we've just seen about the purpose of the most popular tools and just how many of them there are out there. But there are, I think, two big reasons as to why it's difficult to establish this attribution. The first reason is more of an organizational one. So I'm sure many of you in the audience will have experienced this when working with clients. A lot of organizations are siloed. So particularly older, perhaps more well-established companies that define their processes in a pre-digital age will have sort of taken this "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" mindset. And in the digital era, their marketing and sales functions will be siloed. And this in turn creates some issues around setting goals. If there's no visibility by the marketing teams on what the sales goals are for that year, then it's difficult to establish marketing goals and a whole host of issues like that. And the second big reason is that, to put it simply, attribution is difficult. If you think about it conceptually, what we're doing here is a little bit like what scientists do in establishing causality. And scientists have, they have controlled environments, they have controlled experiments. We're here working in the real world as marketers, with lots of variables. A content piece might be multi-touch, it might be used across different channels. It's just simply quite difficult, even in the best of times. And the third and final big challenge we have, and that we're often faced with, is this disconnect between creative and analytics teams. So again, I think many of you in the audience will share my feelings around this, where it's quite common to see creatives thinking that perhaps metrics might hold them back, they get in the way of creative work. Perhaps this is understandable considering that not many creatives have had a background in analytics, so they don't necessarily see the value in it. On the other hand, and here I am speaking as an analyst myself, I see lots of analysts thinking that creative sometimes is superfluous, that it's purely a means to an end, and they don't necessarily see the value of creating great content. So this creates a sort of friction sometimes between two teams, between the more analytical, quantitative teams and the creative, qualitative, if you will, teams. And again, this leads to a whole host of problems: ineffective marketing, perhaps focusing on the wrong things, definitely less effective decision making if you don't have if you're not considering both the qualitative and quantitative side of things. It can even lead you to situations where you've done lots of work, really frustrating situations, this, when you've put in so much effort only to find out that perhaps the work doesn't meet the metrics that you're expecting it to meet, or it doesn't work as you wanted it to. So you have to do everything again. So these are really frustrating situations that can arise as a result of this friction. And ultimately, if you don't have your stakeholders on board as creatives, you're going to really struggle to get ideas approved. So we really want to be able to overcome this friction and make sure the teams are working together well. So to put this all together, we've got three main challenges here. First of all, tool complexity and purpose. So this can lead to analysis paralysis, as we covered. It can lead to an inability into, well, at least not knowing where to apply your analytics budget, where it goes best. And it turns reporting into a challenge. It's quite difficult to retrieve the data points that are most relevant. Second of all, we have marketing attribution. If you don't know how much your marketing is contributed to the bottom line or to key user behaviors, then you can't really make data-driven decisions much to the same accuracy. Your decision making will be slower, perhaps not so based on evidence. And you don't know where to apply most of your marketing efforts. There'll be a huge opportunity cost in this. So if you don't have the metrics to show your impact, it's more likely also that you won't be considered as essential. More of a nice to have if you can't really prove the ROI of your marketing, and nobody wants to be in that situation. Then finally, on team alignment, this is a huge organizational challenge. It can lead to missed opportunities. We have teams working against each other. This will be often not great for company culture. So these three really common challenges, I think you'll agree with me in saying that there are common and significant challenges that as marketers we face on a day-to-day basis. But this wouldn't be an analyst's presentation if I didn't try to quantify this challenge. So these three big problems really affect the bottom line. And BCG, so the Boston Consulting Group, and Google have done some research to show that brands that are best in class around data-driven marketing drive up to 20% more revenue and 30% more cost savings as a result of that. And McKinsey has corroborated that, showing some similar research. Companies that put data at the center of their marketing have a marketing ROI increase of between 15 and 20%. So you can see that it really is a significant issue that we're faced with here. So the question now is, what is the answer? How can we overcome these challenges? And what I suggest to you today is that answer comes in the form of a content analytics framework. So what does this mean exactly? This is really a process to generate a set of key metrics based on a KPI framework. It's a process that encompasses 4 different dimensions. So your analytics maturity, content types, user journeys, and also funnel stages. This is going to help you choose the right tools without being overwhelmed, give you the insights that you need to claim your marketing's credit, and it's also going to enable you to make the case for your marketing ideas. So for the visual thinkers out there, this is what it looks like. We start off by thinking about our maturity. What stage of marketing analytics maturity are you at? Are you just dipping your toes into data for the first time, trying to understand a little bit about analytics and metrics and how everything looks in that context? Or are you, really mature, perhaps using some more predictive analytics? You've got a whole set of tools at your disposal, and more things that we'll cover. As for journeys, so where does the content fit in the user journey? Again, very important to know if this is something right at the beginning of a user journey, if this is something perhaps you focus more on conversions right at the end of a user journey. The content is another very important aspect here. Naturally, the type of content that you want to understand the performance of will determine the metrics that you have at your disposal, and also what tools you can use to get those metrics. And then finally, the funnel stage. At what stage of the marketing funnel should the content piece sit? Is it something more, or is it an awareness play? Is it a conversion play, or is it in between? So these four aspects will contribute to us creating a KPI framework, and that KPI framework will in turn help you to attribute the impact of your marketing accurately. It's going to help you overcome that analysis paralysis around tools. It's going to help you to choose the right data points as well. And it's going to help you bridge that gap between analytics and creative teams that sometimes exists. And just a brief note on what it is. It's not going to be an enormous list of stats. It's not geared only towards data scientists. This is more of a process that's applicable to anyone, no matter how versed they are in analytics and metrics. On the other hand, it's not a panacea, and there's no such thing as a breakfast. This is going to require some effort on your part, but it will help you overcome these common challenges. So the first dimension of our content analytics framework here is maturity. So here on the left, you'll see four different dimensions. So data purpose, setup, process, organization. And as we work our way towards the right here, we'll increase the maturity of our analytics setup. So it's just a way to think about how mature an organization is when it comes to their analytics. Here on the first level, level one awareness, organizations typically just they begin that initial data collection by using stock services. Definitely some of the more popular external services and apps, such as some of the ones we covered, like Google Analytics, HubSpot, perhaps some free or freemium based tools. Perhaps start off by doing some basic lead nurturing, although they'll have limited visibility at this point. And data is seen as a nice to have. It's not so central to organizations' marketing at this level. It's more of a secondary nice to have. But as organizations begin to grow, we typically see them begin doing reporting. So this will be mostly a single touch and more on the basic side of things, but they perhaps might start doing some lead scoring, again still using mostly external tools, but they'll start to experiment with tools for different channels. And importantly, there will be a bit of a culture shift. So data stops being so much a nice to have, and it shifts towards something that's more central, more fulcral to the way that the organization works and does its marketing. On level 3, then, as organizations begin to explore different channels, begin to report across all these multiple channels, try to establish return on investment, although at this stage perhaps not too accurately, but there'll be an attempt to get that ROI. Naturally, these systems will have to be integrated among them, and you start to report across multiple campaigns, multiple channels, and there starts you start to get an alignment in the marketing funnel towards the sales funnel as well. As this begins to consolidate, here we move on to level 4. Data starts taking a really much more of a central role in business decisions, so have much more of an influence there, and reporting becomes customized and segmented to the target audience and integrated with the internal business systems as well. So importantly, at this stage, organizations begin to start looping. They begin looping that data, not just reporting on it historically, but using the findings from the data to inform marketing going forward, to begin optimizing using that iterative approach, so as to get a much more accurate ROI and accurate marketing strategies as well. So they'll also typically begin establishing data-focused, content, KPIs and objectives and key results as well. And then finally, the final stage here, the more strategic level, where we see our market leaders. At this stage, attribution data isn't just used historically. Again, it's used to plan for the future. Begin leveraging tools around predictive analytics, some more internal tools. Tools will be customized towards the audience and the specific marketing processes that are unique to the organization. Sort of getting full observability into the funnel, and strategy at this point is fully data driven. So yeah, at this stage we have our marketing leaders. Most organizations will typically fall somewhere between level 1 and level 5, different aspects in different levels, naturally, as you'd expect. So this is the first thing that you should consider, right? Where on this maturity spectrum do you sit? Because this is going to affect whether you're just dipping your toes in and trying to find some interesting metrics to gauge, give you some indication of how your marketing is performing, or maybe on the other hand, you're looking into doing some optimization or looping or being much more strategic about data, and you have access to a different set of tools. So this is the first thing we need to consider, is the maturity of our content analytics setup. Second of all, our content. So the content will vary naturally in the tool sets that they allow us to implement. They are going to also determine different metric types that we see that we think are of interest. So, for example, a video, you'd be looking at how many plays that video gets, how far into the video users typically get. Whereas for an event, for example, something like attendance will take precedence, will be one of the important metrics there. And the type of content that you use also reflects user needs, right? So, and user journeys will be fairly different among different types of content. So let's use an example here. Let's say that we've got a few types of content, and we pick a blog article, and we want to get an initial idea of how our blog article is performing. So we're just starting off in that awareness phase, or maturity, and we want to understand how our blog article is performing. So what I suggest you do here is sort of to work backwards, take a step back even, and think high level about the sorts of things that would be interesting to know about a blog article. So one thing that would be interesting to know is how much of the content is being read. And this could be reflected in a metric that shows us how much the average time spent on pages. Is that what you would expect? So are people spending the time that you would expect them to spend on that page? So enough to digest the content, to consume, to engage with the content. Another thing that might be interesting is just how much traffic this blog article receives. So that could be easily reflected in page views, the amount of views that page has had. A third point here, perhaps whether it's attracting the right audience. So one way to look at this would be perhaps to look at the keywords that your audience is using to find this blog article. And then finally, where users go afterwards. It's quite interesting to know, whether users simply bounce off the page, or if they actually go on to further user journeys, if they go onto more commercial pages, for example, on your own site. So speaking of user journeys, just to clarify, user journey really is a path that users take. And to give you an example here, this is the Velocity blog. We'd expect someone typically that lands on this blog article to click a CTA further down in the contents. That takes them to one of our services pages, at which point perhaps they will convert by filling out a form. So that's just a typical user journey, and there are two main things we need to think about when considering user journeys. So first of all, at what stage of the user journey is our content? And second, what is the main thing we want to get out of our content piece? So again, going back to that blog article, taking a step back, just thinking very high level about our user journey here. We probably want our article to generate awareness through the organic channels. So the user journey might not even start on the website, it might start previous to that. The user journey might start in a Google search, for example. So looking at what is the percentage of traffic which is non-branded or organic, that will give us an idea of how much awareness we're generating. It should also guide users to a commercial page. This is often a very common objective when setting out user journeys. So we want to look at the percentage of traffic that goes on to further user journeys. Then finally, it should also serve as a lead capture exercise for a qualified audience. So, assuming that your goals are set up for form fills, for example, for your lead capturing forms, then this could be reflected as your goal conversion rate for your session. The fourth and final key dimension of our content analytics framework is the marketing funnel. The marketing funnel can be thought of as 4 separate hypotheses here. So first of all, awareness. This is the hypothesis here is whether or not our content piece improves brand awareness across a multitude of channels, or the organic channel, perhaps paid channel, etc. Our acquisition hypothesis is whether or not our content increases site visits from high intent users from our target audience. Our engagement hypothesis is whether this will lead to high engagement, and perhaps it's more around user experience. So whether it will start high value commercial journeys. And then finally, our conversion hypothesis here right at the end. So whether or not our content will lead to higher than average goal completions. So this marketing funnel can be visualized as such here on the right. Again, two main questions here. At what stage of the funnel does my content sit? Is it something? Is it more of an awareness play, perhaps more of a conversion play, or even does it work across different stages? Are we considering, how much traffic we're acquiring, but also how engaged that traffic is as well? So going back to that blog example, just to visualize how this could work. If you want to see perhaps on the awareness side, when we contribute again to that organic awareness around certain keywords that we've identified as being important keywords, then one metric that could give us that is non
Or you could go out and buy something. Hey guys, if you want to buy something, we have something great called ChannelMix. It does a whole end-to-end platform that allows your team to scale or allows your brand to scale and answer all the analytics questions that you have. All the way from ETL, from any source you want. It's going to clean it, store it in a good place that's ready for analysis. We got some out-of-the-box visualizations that'll plug into a lot of BI tools, allow you to visualize your data all the way from source level to channel attribution or campaign attribution. And then, hey, guess what? You got some smart people that'll help interpret it and push you further to ask better questions about your data. So you're always evolving, not just kind of checking a box off that I delivered a report. All right, guys, I feel like I talked really fast. I really appreciated the time. This is great. I hope you guys stuck in there. I hope you learned something. Hope you have some questions for me. Happy to hang around and answer them. Matt, help me out, buddy. What do you got?
All right, Jared, thank you very much, and we'll get right to it because we only have about 5 minutes. We're going to get to as many as we can. Kimberly just asked us, I've heard that Google doesn't attribute social correctly in GA. Is that true, and how do we combat that?
That's a good question. I'm going to put on my old Google Analytics hat here. So it depends. There's two worlds of social. There's paid social and there's organic social. Organic social is going to be, especially if you have links built in, it's going to be highly dependent on how you're sending that traffic to your website. And so there's this thing called the default channel grouping in Google Analytics, and it is set up with a set of rules. It's like a long if statement basically that exists that says, if my campaign or my medium equals social, then attribute it to social. If it equals paid CPC, then it's going to attribute to paid search. And so you can actually, that's the default value. And by default, Google sometimes gets, they tried to build a template, but it's probably 80-20. So you can actually go in, you can create your own channel groupings based off how you want to tag your media in organic, how you want to tag your media in paid. And then you can use that custom default that looks for the exact parameters that you are putting in your campaigns in order to categorize it the right way. You can also edit the default if you want to get in there, but just know that it's not going to be like a historical update. It's not going to go back and reprocess your data. So as of the day you change it, it's going to start recategorizing things into a social bucket that fits your description. So that's how you combat it. Look up customization on default channel grouping, or I think you can create up to 5 channel groupings with the free version of Analytics out of the box.
Gotcha. So if we mostly use last click attribution right now, what should we be doing to sort of get better and get more granular information around our attribution?
So if you're at last click, there's no hate in that game. That's fine. That's great. That's especially if you're using it in GA. So if you're using it in Adobe or GA, that's already a system. It depends on your business, really. If you have a lot of digital interactions, the first step would be you can use multi-channel reports to allow you to have some visual into the multi-interactions that are happening in your digital experience. That's the easiest and, by the way, free way to go if you want to get a little bit better and say, like, I know that people are interacting multiple times with my website. I just need to look at it. So there's special reports you can dive into. Everything else in GA is primarily going to use last click, and that's what people are programmed to look at. Just go to the multi-channel section, and it'll let you explore some data. It is kind of cumbersome to once you first start in there, but I assure you it gets easier to understand and then make some decisions based off of, if a case for display or something that's higher funnel that may not have a whole lot of last click attribution value. So start there, and that's easiest and cheapest way to get into these harder levels of multi-touch.
All right, I want to ask a question that comes from my heart here because I am a set it and forget it kind of guy. Once you've set up your attribution model based on data, how often do you have to update it or make changes? Can we realistically set it and forget it, or is this something we have to be in every single day and editing? Like, so what's the balance we need to hit here?
So if you do everything like in the step one, like I think the first mistake is don't build a stack. So if you're doing this right, you can automate it probably daily and not think about it too much. And you're just collecting for channel attribution. You can collect new paths as they come in and backfill that information with interactions. If you're doing it manually, or if you're doing something like media mix modeling that's looking at holistically what you're doing in market and then creating a correlation, you could probably get away with only updating that with how often you get new data on your least frequent channel that updates. So every time you get a new blast of data, so if I get TV ratings every month or something, my model may get a lot smarter. So I want to rerun it once I have the full list of what happened during that month. So if I have an incomplete amount of data throughout the month, and then I get this last data dump that happened historically of TV or radio or something, then I basically want to rerun the model when I get the full picture of what was going on. Okay. So I guess the answer for media mix modeling updates is run it as frequent as your most infrequent channel data dump.
Well, Jared, thank you so much for being here today. Guys, I know we didn't get to all your questions. Jared, if folks have more questions they want to ask of you or of Alight Analytics, how can they reach you?
Oh, well, check out the website, alightanalytics.com. Send emails to info@alightanalytics.com if you want to check us out there. And I think we'll definitely be eager to reach out and answer all your questions. Thank you guys so much for the time today. Hope you enjoyed it.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. So, folks, if we didn't get to your questions, you can reach out to Alight Analytics directly and get them answered. And we truly value your feedback. So as we end today's session, and actually it's going to pop up momentarily on your screen, if you could just take a second and fill out the survey that's going to pop here. It's also available in the overview box right under the live session pro tips. So it'll pop up. It may already be there now. It'll pop up shortly, and you have it in the overview box. But just take 30 seconds, answer today's survey about the session. We'd love to know what you think. And the final presentation will begin in 14 minutes at 11:15 p.m. Eastern with Chris Penn presenting how to think about the new Google Analytics 4. You won't want to miss that. Google is rolling out a new analytics platform. You want to check that out. So we'll see you back here in 14 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Marketing Profs Friday Forum. This is Matt Snodgrass, your moderator today from Marketing Profs, and I'm excited to introduce our final speaker of the day, Chris Penn. But first, a few quick reminders. If you experience any audio or visual problems, please try to refresh the page, log out, and log back in. That'll take care of just about everything you're faced with. If you're on Wi-Fi, or if you are like me, and you have a million apps running at one time that could impact your viewing experience, so please try to close out of anything that is extraneous and not helpful for the moment. Today, to join today's conversation with your peers and with Marketing Prof staff, please click the orange Chat Now button in the lower right of your screen. There's, of course, still time to pop in and check out all the great resources in our sponsors booth from Alight Analytics. So many of you were at the last session with Jared from Alight, so make sure you stop by their booth, check out a lot of the great educational resources they have there. And don't forget that the slides are available for download at any time by clicking the Download Slides button in the upper right of your screen. So you've got chat in the lower right and slides in the upper right of your screen. And finally, if you'd like to follow along with today's conference conversation on Twitter, please use the hashtag MProfs. That is hashtag MPROFS. Now, please join me in welcoming Chris Penn. Christopher S. Penn is a recognized thought leader, a best-selling author, a keynote speaker who has shaped Google Analytics adaptation, data-driven marketing, modern email marketing, and AI in marketing. He's the co-founder of PodCamp Conference and a co-host of the Marketing Over Coffee podcast. Today, Chris is presenting on how to think about the new Google Analytics 4. At the end of the presentation, we'll ask Chris your questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can, so feel free to post them in the chat as we go along, and we'll ask them at the end of the day today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Chris, are you ready, my friend?
All right, let's go ahead and do this. I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen here. Today, we're talking about how to think about the new Google Analytics 4. I want to be very clear what this talk is and is not. This is not a talk about how to use Google Analytics 4. There are already existing free courses from Google that will let you at least get the basics down of that. So this is one of them. The link is in the slides, so in the slides you can download. So let's just be clear about that. What is this whole business, right? What are we talking about? For those of you who, like me, have a little more gray hair than not, Google Analytics came out in 2005, right? And for those who've been in marketing for a really long time, we recognize this. It was originally a product by a company called Urchin that used to charge $5,000 a month for their software. Google bought it, and over time has continued to revise it and revise it and revise it until it is the version that most of us know these days looks a bit like this. But there were a lot of limitations to Google Analytics, even the current version today. And so Google decided they were going to try and build something brand new from the ground up that will satisfy the modern problems that marketers are running into. Now, you may say to yourself, well, what if I don't like change? What if I'm not comfortable with this? Here's the good news. For those folks who are a little worried about Google Analytics 4, Google takes a while to make things go away. Not always, there's those folks who used Google Wave and Orkut and stuff certainly had woke up with some surprises one day here or there. But generally speaking, Google gives plenty of advance notice before something just flat out stops working. They did say the current version, which is also known as Universal Analytics, has stopped improving. They're doing bug fixes and things on it, but there's no new development on Google Analytics 3. All of their time and resources are focused on Google Analytics 4. That said, I think it is reasonable. We don't know behind the scenes. Reasonable to think you'll at least get a couple more years out of the existing Google Analytics 3 application before Google eventually does make it go away. So bear that in mind. Why? Why are you doing this to us, Google? Well, it all comes back to this, the mobile device. A few years ago, Google and all of us really in marketing recognized that the world was becoming mobile. The world was becoming a mobile-first world. And you even saw this in things like organic search, where Google said, I think it was in 2018, mobile-first is the way to go. If you're not building for a mobile-first world, you're not building for the modern world. That said, Google Analytics, not a mobile-first application. It was a web-based application. But Google had another application in its toolbox called Firebase. Firebase was their mobile analytics app. And this, developers would take Firebase, put it in their apps, and then be able to download, to see what people are doing inside your app. Well, Google said, this is a great idea. we want to use the Firebase infrastructure, but kind of put everything together. By the way, fun fact, if you start a Google Analytics 4 account, you will actually get a Firebase account along with it for free. There's 3 fundamental technologies that make up Google Analytics 4. There is the web analytics portion that we recognize. There's Firebase, and then there's their modern database, Google BigQuery, under the hood, and that is what makes up Google Analytics 4. And you can see this. There's so many reports that Firebase and Google Analytics 4 have in common. But the reason why, at the end of the day, we're talking about this is because Google Analytics 4, aka Firebase, is built for a mobile first world. So, why is this thing so different? What's so different about this? So there's some big changes under the hood. Probably the biggest change to get into our heads is scoping is gone. So in old Google Analytics and GA3, we would have things like page views or user views and things like that. And all those are now been collapsed down to events. Everything is an event. So for those of you who have done more advanced analytics, this is actually a really good thing, because if you've done building a custom dashboard in Google Data Studio, or tried to do some fancy analysis inside the old Google Analytics, every now and again you'd hit an error message that said, "Hey, I'm sorry, user scope and page scope or hit scope are incompatible. You can't use certain metrics and certain dimensions." And you'd be like, "But I just want to know, where these hits relate to users." And Google would say, "No, you can't do that." Well, in GA4, everything is an event now, from top to bottom, and so those scoping problems are gone. And you will actually see this. One of the things that happens behind the scenes, if you are willing to set it up, is you can actually tie Google Analytics 4 to a Google BigQuery database. You would set one up in Google Cloud. It's pay as you go, with not too much cost up front, and you can actually see the raw data happening behind the scenes. As people come into your website, you can see the raw data streaming in. And this is so powerful, because for up until now, the previous version of Google Analytics did allow you to do that if you were on Analytics 360, the reassuringly expensive version of Google Analytics. Now we have access to our raw data, which, as a data nerd, makes me deliriously happy. Google Analytics 3 was sort of an all-in-one tool, right? You would go into Google Analytics 3 and you would get your tracking code and you would configure that. And then you would have the application and you would, mess around in the application and make charts and graphs and things like that. And then you would, print PDFs or make custom dashboards. And it did all those things, pretty well. As marketers, we got used to life like that. But Google has changed its overall architecture about how they want you to be thinking about the Google marketing platform. It's no longer a one-size-fits-all tool. Now, instead, they want you using the best tool for each job, right? So like I said, original Google Analytics, collection, analysis, and reporting. And if you go in the settings, you see that, right? There's a whole piles of settings. In the new world, Google Analytics 4 is an analysis tool. It is a business intelligence tool. You can see this because the settings are so much easier, right? In terms of what you can do. All those things that were in views, totally gone. That makes you question, where did they go? And what do we, where do I put in goals? This is a little foreign. Well, here's the way Google wants you to be thinking about your analytics stack now. They want you to be collecting your data using Google Tag Manager. All the configuration and setup of things like goals, a good chunk of it is in Tag Manager. That's where they want you to collect data. They want you to do your actual analysis, real business intelligence analysis in Google Analytics. But Google Analytics is no longer a reporting tool. Google now wants you to do all your reporting in Google Data Studio. Why? It separates out the roles and responsibilities. It makes things more granular. And when you play around in the new Google Analytics, and we'll do a little demo along the way here, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for just, the average, your average marketing director just tooling around and saying, oh, I just need to look at this. Well, there is no just need to look at something. It's actually is for business analysis. And so if you have a metric or a KPI or a dashboard that you need an end user to look at, you do it in Google Data Studio. So to maximize Google Analytics 4, you must learn and deploy Tag Manager and Data Studio to conform to the way Google tells you to do it, right? So that's what this is and why Google did these things. How do we plan our move? How do we get to where we want to go? The number one thing that people will do wrong, besides just flinging caution to the wind and switching things over, is they will not do inventory. You have to do inventory of your existing Google Analytics to understand what you need and what you don't need. So you go into Google Analytics 3 and you start inventorying every single piece of of settings. What have you done? What have you set up? Writing it down or taking screenshots or taking notes or whatever the process is, but you need to inventory this for every user of your analytics account. And that also means things like different views, different properties, things like that. Views, by the way, which a lot of people used previously, sort of to separate out departments, like the PR team would have its own view and things like that. Those are all gone. Again, Google wants you doing that kind of granular access control in Data Studio. So the features, just cataloging who uses what features and what settings you have in here is important. Do this first, please. But then you also have to do user mapping. And user mapping is an exercise that you do with people. And it works a little bit like this. You will ask every single user, as whatever that user's role is. I use Google Analytics 2, the task, so that they get an outcome. So for example, you would ask a marketing director, as a marketing director, I use Google Analytics to check out website conversions so that I can forecast revenue. Once you have all of your user statements collected, you then start mapping them to the different features. So in this case, check for website conversions. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to declare what our website conversions are, and we do that in Tag Manager. We have to decide the value of those conversions. Again, that's done in Tag Manager. And we have to send that those conversion data to Google Analytics. In Google Analytics, we define the conversion events in there. And then Data Studio, we have to build reports for this marketing director that track conversions, events, and associated revenue. If you just do the features alone without doing this kind of user mapping, you're going to miss use cases, right? You're going to miss opportunities to not only understand what people use in Google Analytics, but whether or not they even need some of the features. So you've got to do these user mappings. Now, one thing you're going to run into is that there are things that are missing. There are some features that are intentionally missing because of the structure of the software. Views are gone totally. So again, if you're using views as a way to sort of control access to certain information, you have to do that in Data Studio now. Filters are gone. There are a few variations of this now in GA4 where you can do like development, filtering out development traffic and internal IPs. But those other filters, they're all gone. Why? If you need access to that granular level of data, Google wants you to just use BigQuery and get the data out of it that way. Channel groupings, totally gone. And you look at that and go, why? Well, because functionally, we were all using the medium as a channel grouping anyway, so Google said just use medium, and that's your channel grouping now instead. Getting people to do more with their governance around how they do source and medium tracking, which, by the way, is now one of the most important things you can do. If you are not doing source medium tracking and have it declared properly according to the way that Google Analytics understands it, you're going to hose your analytics. That's not going to be pretty. And then the things that were in the old version of Google Analytics events, categories, actions, labels, and values, those are gone too. They are now replaced by event name and event value. That gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of what data you can push into Google Analytics 4, but it does require more governance, more process to make sure that that you're using things in a consistent format. So if there isn't somebody in your organization who is process oriented, find someone who is a good project manager, an agency, whatever, in order to standardize things and make them work correctly. So how do we get this thing going? right? How do we get Google Analytics 4? Number one, run in parallel. Please, please, please do not turn off your old Google Analytics 3 instance just yet, right? Do not stop using it, because there will be things that as you get people up and running on GA4, there's going to be a whole lot of discomfort. There's going to be a whole lot of people who will not be able to find their way around or get the information they need or even necessarily have the training. So please run these two in parallel. Don't remove your old GA3 tracking codes, things like that. When it comes to tracking, by the way, running in parallel means you're going to have a lot of extra stuff in Tag Manager. So, for example, in Google Tag Manager, I'm going to go into my tags here, and you'll notice I've started marking things. This is a GA3 tag. This is a GA4 tag, and making sure that we're clear as we run in parallel which things belong to which. So you're going to need to have that governance in order to make your pilot project work well. Second thing you need to do, send your people to training. Free training from Google, directly from Google. Don't need to pay money for it, but send them through the Google Analytics 4 training. It is comprehensive. It is well thought out. It explains a lot of the philosophical changes and some practical things, but you absolutely positively must make some time for people so they can go do these trainings. The third thing that you need to do is get in the habit of thinking about the Google Marketing Platform as these things: collect, analyze, and report. They are separate, they are different, and they are things that you don't want to go mixing up. When it comes to dashboards and things, you're going to want to start building those in parallel. So every dashboard that you've got in Google Analytics right now, or your old Google Data Studio dashboards that are in GA3, start porting them over to GA4. Start making that transition so that you can see, feature for feature, can you replicate the results that people need? And again, this is where those user stories really come in handy, because if you don't have those user stories built out of, as a marketing director, I use Google Analytics to check our website conversions so I can forecast revenue, then your dashboards will probably be a very laborious project. When I go into organizations and look at the way they use dashboards, an awful lot of the time they are really more like Avinash Kaushik calls it data puking. We just throw a bunch of stuff on the screen and hope somebody finds value in it. This is a great opportunity as you make this transition to clean house of dashboards and reports and things that nobody looks at, that nobody values, things like that. By the way, fun pro tip for Google Data Studio, you can actually put Google Analytics tracking in Data Studio so you can measure to see how often people use your dashboards. And finally, when it comes to, second to last, when it comes to Google Analytics 4, the next most important thing is to find an easy win. Something that people can say, oh, this is worth using. Okay, I'm willing to start playing with this a little bit. I see some value here. Those easy wins make the transition process more palatable, because once you show somebody something they can't get in Google Analytics 3, they can easily get in Google Analytics 4. They're like, oh, all right, I see some benefit here. Let's look at 3 easy wins that you can get in Google Analytics 4. Number one, in old Google Analytics 3, you were limited to 20 goals, right? In 4, you got 30 of them now. So 50% more goal conversions. But more importantly, if you could set up properly, it's much less effort to declare something a conversion now. So if you've got it set up in Tag Manager and working correctly, and you see something in the event list, you're like, oh yeah, that's important. I want that to be a goal. You just toggle on that mark as a conversion, and now, boom, you're starting to measure that as a conversion. So it's really, as long as you do the architecture and set up properly, it is much easier to declare conversions. And because of the nature of the way Google Analytics 4 tags are set up, it's actually easier to deal with like values. In the old ones, you had to do a category and a label and an action and a value. Now, if I just go into a tag configuration, I choose a Google Analytics 4, oops, not configuration, that's the wrong one, event, and choose my GA4 tag, I can just specify I want all these different custom values. So I could put in event type, webinar, event sponsor, marketing profits, and all that data would go into Google Analytics 4. so I have a lot more flexibility when it comes to being able to provide data for my conversions, and a lot more granularity. That granularity is really important because it allows us to use those 30 goal slots with a lot more detail, and not run out of them. The next easy win, one that I love so much, is it has really good path analysis, so much better path analysis than GA3. So I'm going to start a brand new path analysis here. Now, what path analysis is it's a way for you to look at what people are doing on your website. Right? So I'm going to change this to page name and screen name. And again, if you're using GA4, particularly in combination with a web and a website and a mobile app, then you get some really, really fun stuff because you can see people bouncing back and forth between the two. But here I've got the website. Here's the start of the sessions. The first page somebody went to, here's one of our B2B white papers. You can see pretty easily 87% of those 426 made it to there. And I can see what they do after that. 7 went back to the landing page. 3 went to one of our blog posts, and click on that and see what happens after that. Nope, nothing happened after that. People didn't go any further. But path analysis is a way to be able to pull together really nice funnels, if you will, or journeys through the website, and understand how people use your content. And you can get really fancy with this by adding things like filters. So if you only want to see pathways to the website from people from Facebook or LinkedIn or Medium, or I guess, well, no, you can't click on anything in Clubhouse, so you won't see that. But you can filter by dates and things. So you can do all these different user journeys right inside Google Analytics 4 very, very easily. It's a lot of fun. So that's easy win number 2, I think, that to help people understand, there's some value to the software. But my favorite easy win by far in Google Analytics 4 is the built-in anomaly detection and alerting system, which is very robust and super easy. So let me show you an example. We're going to go to Automated Insights. I'm going to create a brand new automated insight, not one that's packaged here, although Google will bubble these up just to show you, hey, things are happening. That's cool. And I'm going to create a new custom insight. I want this to be daily. And let's do sessions. And I want to say, let's sessions on a percentage decrease more than 90% since the previous day. And what do we call this? Hey, who broke the website? So now I have essentially a data-based alert that tells me, oh, I'm not getting, I've seen 90% less traffic to my website today through Google Analytics than I did the previous day. If you've ever logged into your company's analytics account, and I've done this so many times with so many clients, you see a 2-week stretch where there's no data. You're like, why? What happened there? And somebody said, oh yeah, IT changed the website and we forgot our Google Analytics tracking code wasn't in the migration. Like, well, there's 2 weeks of data we can never get back. Having these automated insights available just for even simple things like this tells you, hey, something's up. Go look at it. But on top of that, if you have known KPIs, remember a KPI is a key performance indicator. It's the number that you get a bonus for. If you have KPIs and they're available here inside of Google Analytics, for example, conversions, and you say, I want to see, show me there's an anomaly, something's up, or show me that we've had, 15% more conversions than the previous day. You can be alerted to these things. You can even go, if you wanted to evaluate for the website at an hourly basis, right? Previous hour. So if you're running a big campaign, of some kind, you can see updates really, really fast, which is very, very nice. So those are kind of the 3 things that I find easier to get to and faster to get to in Google Analytics 4 than you can in 3. Now, those are the easy ones, right? So we talked about insights, the trees, the more goal conversions. A big win that is not an easy win, but a big one that is a big win is Google BigQuery, right? So if you go into your Google Analytics 4 setup, and you go and say link to a BigQuery table, and then you have a BigQuery instance, you can get the raw data, right? You can see every single hit that comes into your website, the page location. It's a multi-dimensional table. As you can see, there's a lot packed into every single row. If you want to do true attribution analysis, because you get the user ID in here, the Google anonymized user ID, and you get all the different variables that Google Analytics collects, and the path that every user takes by session date, by session number. You can build some really, really cool data-driven applications on top of Google Analytics 4. This is the part that I personally am the most excited about, because doing things like, real serious attribution analysis on site, being able to group by individual anonymized user is just so powerful. There's so much you can do with this information. So whatever your structure is internally, start thinking about how you could use these advanced features. Look at the data that's available to you and say, what could we do with this? What could we know from this? Now, it doesn't mean that you have to go out and build it right away, but at least start planning for it. To say, okay, if we know that we get every single page visit to our website in an easy to process database, what could we do with that? What kind of information could we extract from that? Finally, deploying Google Analytics 4. It is actively under development, right? Which means that you don't just wing it in a mission-critical environment. There are some features that Google Analytics 4 is still catching up on, right? It was when it launched in October 2020, in the API, they didn't include things like source and medium. Like, we kind of need that. 3 months later, like, hey, new product update. Now you can get these source fields. Like, that's 3 months too late, guys. So know that there are issues with it. There are known issues, big known issues with e-commerce, right? With e-commerce tracking, that you can do it. It can be done. It is a tremendous amount of work, and many e-commerce vendors, like Shopify, for example, do not support GA4 out of the box yet. So if you are in a mission-critical environment where you've got, you rely on some of this data, be aware that it is not ready for prime time as the only source of analytics. It is great to get it up and running, and you should get it up and running. Because as with all things Google, nothing is ever retroactive. So the day that you put your GA4 tracking code on your site is the day you start getting data. And if you tied it to BigQuery, it's the day that you start getting tables inside of BigQuery. You should absolutely get it on your website and collecting the raw data today. But don't make it your primary production environment until you're sure that you've gone through the inventory exercise, you've gone through the user stories, and you've mapped out what features you do and don't need, because otherwise you may run into some gotchas. Now, we've had some clients, including ourselves, go through the migration, and there are 3 things that almost always go wrong. The thing that goes wrong, number 1, inadequate inventory. People just don't take the time to do it right. They don't interview users. They don't catalog all the features. And as a result, stuff gets missed. Number 2, insufficient training. Again, it is a big change. It is a big difference. Not in necessarily like, what button do I push, but just getting people to think about the difference between a reporting tool, which is what a lot of people used Google Analytics 3 for, and a BI tool, which is what Google Analytics 4 is. That is a head shift for a lot of people. And the idea that you could just jump into an analysis tool and start digging apart conversions is really cool, but it's a change in how people think, right? When you dig into this, you can get super granular on every single conversion you've got going. But it's not a reporting tool. And so making sure that people have the training to understand the difference between analysis and reporting. And number 3, things that do go wrong are old features that people are dependent on that do not have new parallels. And that's not a question necessarily of a feature being missing so much as it may be a need to update some of your processes internally in order to accommodate these things, the way the new application works. So those are the things that we've seen go wrong, and I'm sure there'll be many, many more as we all start doing our migrations to the new environment. So with that, I realized that was a lot to pack into 30 minutes, but I know we want to save some time for questions. So let's go ahead and skip to those questions. Matt?
Hey, Chris, thank you so much. We do have a bunch of questions, which should be no surprise at all with a brand new piece of software. So if you are ready, I am ready. Let's do this. Are you all set?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Sandra asks us first, can I connect GA4 to Power BI?
Not directly that I know of. It's been a little while since I've done Power BI, but I know Power BI does talk to BigQuery, so that would be your workaround.
Okay, so go through BigQuery to get there. Michael asks us, do we know whether custom dashboards will go away when the pre-GA4 version is retired? So if we fully move over to 4 and close something else, will custom dashboards go away?
The custom dashboards, yeah, if it's in GA3, it will go away. Eventually. Not soon, but it eventually will. And I would strongly encourage you, whatever custom dashboards you've got set up in Google Analytics itself, get them into Data Studio as soon as possible, because that's how you're going to make sure that you have some continuity. And when you do that, build with the idea in mind that you're going to have a GA3 version that connects to the older data source, and you have a GA4 version as well. And you want to try and build it in parallel to the extent as possible.
So that's important, is that we need to make sure that we recreate everything that we have for that eventuality when that does flip over. Mm-hmm. Alexander is curious as to what Chrome extensions you're using, because he sees a bunch of them up there. I wonder if there's anything that you want to talk about that really stands out that's helpful for you. I mean, obviously they're all helpful if you're using them, but what are your kind of favorites?
OpenList is probably my favorite. This is one which allows you to copy and paste all of your URLs that are in currently open tabs. I find that very, very helpful. There's a bunch of other ones too, LastPass and stuff like that in there.
That's fantastic, because I can't tell you how many times I've had a browser with 55 tabs open just crash on me, and trying to get those. What's it called?
OpenList.
Well, I'm writing that down right now. OpenList. Christine asked, does every user get access to BigQuery?
If you have a Google Cloud account, yes. I mean, you would have to make sure you have a Google Cloud account with, billing set up properly. And then you would enable BigQuery, and then you would instantiate that linkage between GA4 and your BigQuery database. So it is open to everyone. You just have to go through the setup process to make it work.
And Hillary's asking us right now, as we're talking about this, it seems very specific. Is the free operations and the free usage tier enough to get started, or do we need to go more?
Oh, for BigQuery, yeah. Well, it.
Sorry, she said BigQuery pricing seems very specific. I left out a keyword there.
Yes. It depends. It depends on the size of your website and how much extra stuff you have going into BigQuery. So, like, our website is, like 5 to 10,000 visitors a month, and we have. What do I have here? Probably about half a dozen, a dozen or so events, and we're still on the free tier. If your site's got 1 million visitors a month, you're going to blow through that pretty quickly, right? Because every single page visit somebody does is going to add into that data table pretty quickly. If you put in all 500 custom events you're allowed to use, you're going to fill up that table pretty quickly. So it depends on the size of your site and the traffic. I would say if you are currently, under 10,000 visitors a month right now in GA3, you don't have, like 20 views and 40 properties, then you're probably going to be okay with the free tier. If you do have multiple sites and multiple properties, or 1 million visitors a month, then you're going to start incurring some of the cost of BigQuery. Now, that said, BigQuery is very robust and is not all that expensive. I think my overall BigQuery bill each month is around $12 or $13 a month. And I use it a fair amount. Okay.
So it definitely seems like it is a reasonable expense to incur for the value you get out of it, provided you are taking advantage and using it.
That's a really important part. If you're turning on just to have the data as a curiosity, I don't know that that's the best approach. If you know that you're going to dig into that data someday and you would like to have it available when you do, then yeah, set it up.
Andy asks us that Analytics 3 used a sample of your data when you were looking at, if you got larger than a certain threshold, it always looked at sampled data. Is that the same for GA4? Or if you need to get the complete information, do you have to use BigQuery? How's that information pulled in?
GA4 still does use sampling. You'll see it in some of the notices when you're building reports. But what's in BigQuery is the raw goods.
Okay. So BigQuery gives you the real deal, everything there, huh?
Yep, everything, which is good and bad because, again, if you're not comfortable in a a Cloud SQL database, it can be a little intimidating. It is, when you look at it, it is not quite so user friendly.
Sharon, if you could do me a favor and clarify that question, I just want to make sure if that last word should be cost, C-O-S-T. I want to make sure. So while she's working that, we've got another question coming in here. Have you heard of any problems between GA4 and web platforms like Wix or WordPress or anything like that?
The problems that you run into there are not GA4 problems, they're tag manager problems. A lot of providers that are more restrictive about what tracking codes you can put on a website are running, they don't love tag manager. And so we have seen people have to, in rare cases, use the Google G tag, and even then that doesn't necessarily work. So check with your provider to see if they support tag manager, and if they don't support tag manager, start looking for a different provider because they're not with the current the times.
Okay. Annette asked a while ago, I'm sorry, Annette, I missed your question, but she asked a while ago, how do you do year-over-year analysis once you start using GA4? Because if it starts with no past data and you have to compare that to 3, is that is that a head scratcher there?
It's not a head scratcher. It is a problem. It is a known problem. So that's one of the reasons why I say do not shut down your GA3 account. Right? Keep that running. Keep it running in parallel. So that if you need to do some basic year-over-year comparisons, you have that data to do so in GA3. Again, I expect people to have GA3 access to it for at least a couple of years. So you want to get GA4 set up and running now, get the data collected now. Keep doing a year-over-year reporting in GA3 for like the next year or so. But then, by the time it gets deprecated, you should have a couple of years worth of data in GA4.
Gotcha. Okay. Any sense of how GA4 interacts with Google Ads? Are goal conversions easy to reinstall and re-input? Alexander asks us.
So they're all conversion events. Google Ads is not set up yet to fully use the power of GA4. So again, that's an instance where, for the time being, you're going to want to be relying on GA3. That said, because of the way it passes the exact same tracking codes and source medium, things like that, you can do the tracking. I don't think the conversion data gets passed back yet. So with conversion linker, I think that is still in process. So again, it's an instance where you want to have both running in parallel.
Okay. So, I mean, we have heard this come up multiple times. It is so critically important, guys, that you are running these things in parallel, to not just stop one. Run these things, collect your data for as long as you possibly can, and then switch over. Maz asks, are web developers use a different view than our marketing team does? How easy or difficult is it to add new filters and views in GA4? Is it similar?
There are no views in GA4. So this is an instance where if they're using it for a specific purpose, just to get a sense of traffic and things like that, you want to be doing that in Data Studio. Because there are no views in GA4. You can set up another property, but that's not a great idea. You really want to understand and map those. Again, going back to the user stories, what does a developer do? As a developer, I use Google Analytics to do what, so that what, and then you can map that into something for Data Studio. Or if they're using it for like testing and things like that, then you can grant them access to that and get them trained up on where to find some of that data for like real time, for example, that would be in GA4.
Alex gets our gold star for asking questions today. He's all over this. He asks that you mentioned GA4 is focused on mobile first. Is there anything new, important data that are new to GA4 that, as it relates to mobile, that you can't see in GA3?
Tons. Again, remember, this is Firebase. So I have my GA4 set up for the web because, Trust Insights, we don't have a mobile app. But if you do have a mobile app, when you're in GA4, you're going to add that in your admin as a new data stream. So let me just show it quickly here. It's like your iOS data stream, your Android data stream. And when you do that, you're then going to start getting all of the pieces that you would normally get in Firebase inside of GA4. So things like touches on certain screens, move from screen to screen, invalid taps, and all the stuff that you currently get in Firebase, you'll be able to get in GA4. So all of that comes in with the mobile app side of things. It's pretty cool if you have a mobile app. And one of the things that's really, really valuable about this is user unification. So if you have a user who's on your website and then that same user opens up the mobile app and interacts with it, you will be able to know that that user is the same person.
Okay. Yeah, that's ultra powerful. I'm going to read probably your favorite comment of the day. Christine says, your explanation of GA4 is far superior to Google's training. Do you have any other recommendations for training for us? Can you come to people's house and train them, I guess?
One of the best technical blogs to read is Simo Ahava's blog. He is, if you are struggling with very specific, extremely technical stuff, his blog is excellent for digging in. Now, that said, his blog is extremely technical. So if you've got a problem that is not as technical, it may or may not be as helpful. But if you're stumped, this is the first place I go. Like, okay, what a Simo is like, because Simo will say, oh, yeah, it's broken. They haven't fixed it, kind of thing. In terms of other resources, I mean, honestly, the biggest thing right now is just digging around in the application and again, trying to do that mapping from one thing to another as to where something lives that used to be available somewhere else, and trying to understand the different features and how to use them. I don't know of any off-the-shelf trainings that, do a great job. I've, since we started playing with this, just figured it out from Google's documentation.
How long have you been working on this and playing around with it?
Since it was still known as App Plus Web, so they had actually baited this for about a year, called App Plus Web, and before naming it GA4. And again, without a mobile app, I had limited insight into the mobile side, but seeing what they were doing and the direction they were going, it was pretty clear that they think Firebase is the future of measurement for all of us as marketers.
Can you show us how to jump between 3 and 4 now that you have your screen
that's
up
easy.
here?
So in the property menu,
is it just a drop down?
It is. GA4 is just yet another property. So if I go and click into, it's a property, so there's no view on it. But for example, I'll hop back into my GA3 link shortening account, and this is we're back in that safe, comfortable space.
This is what people love.
Exactly.
Well, what people know, maybe not love, but they know it.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's simply just another property that's added. Right.
Yep.
Sharon asks, what would be your recommendation for high-scale e-commerce companies?
Okay, so e-commerce. Get it set up, get it tracking, and then you have to figure out in e-commerce. The GA4 data layer for e-commerce is different than the GA3 one. The events have different names and things like that. So you have to figure out, does your current e-commerce software support both of those? If your current e-commerce software does not support both versions of the data layers, you have two choices. One, you can wait for your provider to update it. Two, you can build your own JavaScripts to push the same variables into a new GA4 data layer that's compatible with GA4 and Tag Manager. Most folks I know view that as needless amounts of extra work, and so are sticking with GA3 until the providers natively support that.
Gotcha. We have we've hit a milestone here, Chris. We have just accomplished something I don't think we've ever done as we've done webinars together. We got through all of our Q&A questions before the end of time. I think that is a new one for you and I. All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. As usual, it was amazing. If folks have questions for you or about Trust Insights, where can they reach you?
Pretty easy. Go to trustinsights.ai. You can email me there as well. Happy to answer questions and things. And obviously, we do this for clients too. So if you want some help or just want you're like, please have somebody do this for me, we will help with that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Again, thanks for being here. And thank you all, folks. We truly value your feedback. We appreciate you being here today. So please fill out the short survey that our friends at WorkCast are going to pop up on the screen in just a second. There will be a survey that pops up. Or you can grab the link from the overview box right under the live session pro tips. Do me a favor, take 30 seconds, fill out the survey. Let us know what you thought of today's session. We want to know what you think. And don't forget, before you leave the event today, visit the resources page to download a copy of today's presentations and other great resources. You can visit Alight Analytics in their booth. Make sure you stop by there. They can help you solve some of your analytics challenges. They have some downloadable content there. So we want to say thank you again to Alight Analytics. And that is it, my friends. That concludes today's Friday Forum on metrics and analytics. Thank you for your participation. Remember, if you want to download the slides, you can do that. We will have these available on our website on demand next week. So if there's something that you didn't catch, if you had to walk away from your computer, if things went crazy and dropped, if you want to just come back and watch it all again, you can do so starting next week. And don't forget, mark your calendars for our next Friday Forum, which is May 14th, on the topic of video marketing. That's right, there's no Friday Forum in April. It's not an April Fool's. It's real. There's no Friday Forum. But if you need some
That's
marketing
because we're going to the Marketing Profs B2B Forum.
That's right. And if you need more marketing profs in your life, as Chris said, check out the B2B Forum online April 7th and 8th. And Chris, I do believe you'll be there, correct?
I will be doing more GA4 stuff.
Awesome. So if you guys did not get enough today, there is more to come on April 7th and 8th. So check out the Marketing Profs B2B Forum. Again, Chris, thanks so much for being here. Thanks to all of you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you guys again. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.